Hello and welcome to the final episode of How to Citizen. This is chapter 10. We are reading chapter 10, guys. We got through it. The Civics book is done. 8th grade has been passed. Today we have with us comedian Kunal Kamra, also instigator-in-chief, I guess, given by what he's up to these days. The chapter is titled Law and Social Justice, which is all about implementation. For the last 9 chapters, we have been understanding a lot of things. Now we have finally come to a point where if anything matters at all anymore, whether these laws are implemented at all. You think so? Well, look at the Bhopal Gas Tragedy is what our civics book says, where nothing mattered. People died, law was not implemented, maybe something's changed. Kunal tells us a bunch of horrifying stories where the law did not take over. Instead, mob mentality did. And that is the times we live in, where maybe mob mentality is the law, I guess. Does our civics book talk about that? Maybe. Let's find out. So let's get schooling and let's get schooled with Kunal Kamra. Hello, Kunal Kamra.
Hello everybody.
He is the guest today,
Yes.
Kunal Kamra, who is wearing a Wah-Modiji-Wah t-shirt.
As usual.
As usual, yeah. I like how this has become your like go-to thing now.
Yeah. Compliment the Prime Minister.
Yeah, compliment the Prime Minister. I love it. So this is going to be like a very nice explosive.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah.
Hopefully,
Please, Kunal, make it explosive.
I will try my best.
This is chapter 10,
Yeah.
Law and Social Justice.
Yes.
Right. So before we get started with the chapter, Kunal, I just wanted to ask you, how are you as a student in school?
I was pretty pathetic.
Yeah.
But I went to a state board school, so I was as pathetic as the teachers.
As the teacher.
Do you remember your civics teacher? Or do you remember civics at all?
No. I remember my civics teacher. Yes, I do.
Yes, you do. Yeah. बहुत मार खाया.
Civics or history or civics में तो बहुत पिटते थे.
Where did you go to school?
Victoria High School, Mahim.
Oh, okay. And it was like a big school. How was it exactly? Can you describe it a little?
It was, by Bombay standards, a building with a graveyard and another small building.
Like a literally graveyard.
Yeah. School में graveyard और church दोनों थे.
Seriously?
हाँ.
That's depressing.
Of course, मेरे classroom से मैंने कितने funerals experience किए.
That's so depressing though. Like when you're like learning something, there's a funeral going on.
Student के spirits का भी funeral हो ही रहा है.
So basically, in this podcast where we are, we want people to have an immersive experience.
Right.
What we do is we put up the chapter as a drive link under the description of the chapter.
Right.
So while we are talking about this, they can also go through it, read it if they want, etc. So it's an immersive experience.
Nice.
But what we do is we start off by basically asking you to describe a place where you and your friends used to hang out in 8th grade.
Yeah.
Now I want a funeral to go on outside the window.
नहीं, hang out करते थे. एक छोटा garden type जगह था,
Yeah.
जिसके आजू बाजू पौधे लगे थे.
Yeah.
और अंदर एक swing, एक seesaw,
Right.
और एक वो जो गोल घूमने वाला था.
Yeah.
वो गोल घूमने वाला टूटा हुआ था. मेरे पूरे 16 साल मेरे साल में था, वो टूटा हुआ ही था. और वहाँ पे हम हैंग आउट करते थे.
Okay.
So
that is where you
space.
used to chill with your friends and like.
Yeah.
So do you sit on the swing or the seesaw?
नहीं, वो बंद था जगह.
अच्छा.
So you were just seeing
उसके
it.
बाहर. हाँ, उसके बाहर.
Only visual play.
Yeah,
visual
visual
toys.
हाँ.
Yeah, I was hoping for a funeral, but damn it. No.
हमेशा नहीं होता था.
हमेशा नहीं होता था. Like रोज नहीं मरते थे लोग.
रोज नहीं मरते. और काफी छोटा ग्रेवयार्ड भी था, तो मतलब
अच्छा.
कितने ही घुसाओगे उसमें.
हाँ, एक के ऊपर एक.
फाइनली वहाँ पे भी बॉम्बे रियल एस्टेट के हिसाब से वहाँ पे भी हाउसफुल हो चुका था.
Right. By the way, do they actually sell graveyard spaces? I've never
I
wondered
have
about
no
this.
clue.
है ना?
If it's free, I am sure a lot of people will fake their death in prime property. मैं मर गया हूँ, मुझे कोलाबा में दफनाना.
So you have to pay a yearly fee to maintain the grave of your relative.
Oh. So, Buzz just told us that there is a yearly fee to maintain a graveyard for. Oh, that's interesting.
That is
Fun
that is
times.
interesting.
Fees बंद ही नहीं होते कभी.
Yeah, like मरने के बाद भी पैसा खर्च करो. But okay, so we are sitting there, three of us.
Yes.
We're chilling, and we are basically we have a viva tomorrow
Okay.
about this stupid chapter,
Right.
and we have to talk about it. Right?
For sure.
So first impressions, guys, after reading the chapter. We sent you this chapter 24
Right.
hours earlier.
Yeah.
Right? And you read it right now.
I read it in the taxi.
Yes.
And I read it while I was here.
Yeah.
The last 5 pages was here.
Yeah.
It's an open book test. You can have your books out. It's fine.
Yeah. So it's not a test to do.
It's not a test.
Yeah.
It's a revising session.
Yeah, revising session. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can I start with the question?
Yeah. But the first impressions of the chapter.
First impression of the chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, first impressions of the chapter is basically I read through a lot of things that I knew existed.
Yeah.
But I also knew that they have no point because it exists for people who have no tools to figure out that this exists. And they
Okay.
have no rights and knowledge of rights.
Right.
They're just trying to get gainfully employed.
Right.
So it exists. I think that's what comes to the broader thing about law and order in our country or any developing country is that law and order का purpose होना चाहिए to keep the rich in check, right? कि अमीर आदमी अपना काम सही से कर रहा है कि नहीं.
Yeah.
Right.
पर इंडिया में लॉ एंड ऑर्डर का काम है कि खाली गरीबों को चेक में रखो.
Right.
लाइक उनको मतलब जस्टिस लेने के लिए इट्स एन ओवरड्यू प्रोसेस लाइक वी रेड हियर
Yeah.
लाइक इन मेनी केसेस व्हिच वी विल कम टू.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that was my first impression of it. But of
Yeah.
course we all know that this exists in some way. Like
Yeah.
you know, wages have to be correct.
Yeah.
Uh,
Safety standards.
Environmental standards.
Yeah.
Child labor is not supposed to happen in a country.
Right.
In any country.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so we know about this stuff,
Yeah.
but it is just implement kaise karte.
Yeah. Shreyas?
My impressions were that I saw things, I read things that I feel to live in a society, it's almost like you conveniently forget things
What do you
to
mean?
live every day.
Yeah.
Like labor laws,
Right,
for instance.
right.
I feel it's so easy to not think about that. It's so easy to just be like, oh, that's a problem that like they'll figure out. And I think I just like that this chapter
Actually addresses that.
which it should.
And
That's the
it's
job.
really interesting how through 9 chapters that we have done till now in the Civics book, they've talked about a lot of concepts, right?
Right.
Like marginalization, secularism, constitution क्या होता है, parliament क्यों चाहिए, law and justice. Like this chapter is titled Law and Social Justice, which we are dealing with right now. But there is a understanding judiciary chapter where they have given ideals of how, what our constitution says, what laws are supposed to be, etc. And this 10th chapter is about enforcement of the laws. Basically, they are in the end telling us कि laws was सब ठीक है, enforce नहीं हुआ तो क्या करोगे?
हाँ. मतलब that's why you differentiate between a first world and a third world country.
Right.
Like in a first world country, people are protesting for either laws to be taken out
Right.
or laws to be implemented. Like either it has been like ये law ये time के लिए सही नहीं है इसे हटाओ, या ये law ये time पे चाहिए इसे लेके आओ.
Right.
Like कोई country में पढ़ रहा था इमोशनल अब्यूज के ऊपर उन्होंने law डाला है.
Okay.
कोई country में बोल रहे हैं कि डेथ पेनल्टी पूरी तरह से हटा देना चाहिए. अपने कंट्री का स्ट्रगल है कि हम लोग का प्रोटेस्ट इज लॉ टू बी फॉलोड.
Yeah.
लाइक मैं स्कूल के बच्चे को देख रहा हूँ वो प्लेकार्ड पकड़ के खड़ा है, डोंट ड्रिंक एंड ड्राइव. लाइक यार ये तो लॉ है. ये पकड़ के क्यों खड़ा है तो?
That's true. लोगों को पता नहीं है पर drink and drive नहीं
हाँ,
करना
मतलब लोगों को पता है बिकॉज अपना लॉ एनफोर्स होने में कितना मतलब बैरिकेडिंग है.
Right, absolutely. And that's where I think civic duty की भी बात आती है, right? Like, like for instance, you are aware you are not supposed to drink and drive. You are aware, right? And as a good citizen, you will never do it.
हाँ.
But then if you are a good citizen.
Right.
Otherwise, you're like, कर सकता है मैं.
Like 25 के बाद मैंने ये स्ट्रिक्ट रूल लाइफ में अप्लाई किया कि अगर कोई एक ड्रिंक भी पिया मैं उसकी गाड़ी में बैठूंगा भी नहीं.
That's a great rule to follow.
लाइक दोपहर के 4 बजे हो तो भी. मतलब वो कि हम लोग लॉ को फॉलो नहीं कर रहे क्योंकि पकड़े जाने का कोई स्कोप नहीं है.
Right. एनफोर्समेंट नहीं
हाँ,
है.
मतलब अरे गोवा में तो चलता है ना यार, यहाँ पे तो सभी होता है. और यार क्या रिस्क लेना है यार, ये मतलब.
And those laws have been made for us, not
yeah,
like
yeah.
police के लिए नहीं बनाया गया है.
And the fear of that this if I break this law, my entire life would turn around.
Yeah.
That fear is not there in us for some reason.
That's actually very true, yeah.
Everybody has a story about how did they skirt around this law. Okay. और एक पुलिस वाला मिला था यार, फिर उसने मेरे को पकड़ लिया गांजा मारते हुए यार, फिर मैं बोला अंकल क्या कर रहे हो यार, फिर मैं उसको ATM लेके गया, मैं बोला मेरे पास 700 रुपए है, तो वो बोला ठीक है 500 दे. Like किसी के पास वो स्टोरी नहीं है कि मैं 3 महीना जेल में था, मेरी लाइफ बदल गई, you know, ये सब हुआ मेरे साथ, काफी चीजें. वैसी स्टोरीज हम सुनते ही नहीं है, बिकॉज वैसी स्टोरी शायद है ही नहीं.
No, and also I think the वैसी stories हमारे sort of circle में नहीं है. Right. Because as you said rightly in the beginning, laws are to keep the poor in check. Right? क्योंकि if you are from a marginalized background, you're from a lower income group, the law putting down forcefully coming down on you is higher than someone like us. कोई Mercedes में जा रहा है और सिग्नल तोड़ेगा versus कोई ऑटो में जा रहा है और सिग्नल तोड़ेगा. There's a world of difference.
अरे बाइक वालों की तरफ पुलिस वालों का बर्ताव देखो यार. वो पहले आके तो चाबी निकाल देते हैं बाइक से.
That's true.
आजा पीछे आ तू आ, तेरा कोई औकात नहीं है. मतलब मैं बाइक भी चलाता हूँ कभी कभी. मेरे डैड के पास एक्टिवा है, अभी किधर काम पे जाना हो तो बाइक चलाऊंगा. मैं जेन्युइनली बाइक चलाता हूँ तो एक सर्टेन आंख से मेरे को पुलिस वाला दिख रहा है.
राइट.
ठीक है कि वो कैसे है, मतलब क्या है, तेरे और मेरे में से 2 पहियों का फर्क है. और जब मैं अपनी गाड़ी से जाता हूँ तब वो दूसरी आंख से देखता
है कि अब 4 पहियों का फर्क है,
पहिए वाले हो. तो वो तो है ही हमारे में.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And very interesting. I have this story as well now that we're talking about traffic violations. एक बार कॉलेज के सामने my friend had a Luna. Right? वो Luna लेके घुमाता था हमको क्योंकि मेरे पास तो कुछ था नहीं. तो पीछे एक बार बिठा के रॉन्ग साइड जा रहा था कॉलेज के सामने से, तो एक पुलिस वाले ने पकड़ लिया जैसे कि चलो फाइन लगेगा, 200 रुपए का फाइन लगेगा, व्हाटएवर. रॉन्ग साइड जा रहे थे, गरीब स्टूडेंट्स, व्हाट आर वी सपोज्ड टू डू. तो ही वाज लाइक अच्छा ठीक है तू चल 100 रुपए दे दे और निपटा लो. Right? That is the enforcement level, right? 100 रुपए दे दो, निपटा लो. तो कोई रिसिप्ट नहीं कटेगी, कोर्ट नहीं जाना पड़ेगा, एक्सेट्रा. The dude, like an idiot, my friend is like, मेरे पास तो लाइसेंस है नहीं. वहां पे बोल दिया बस, अच्छा फिर 300 रुपए लगेगा, right? And then we did this dramatic thing of opening our purses and then ऐसे उल्टा करके उसको नीचे कर रहे, उसमें से 20 रुपए गिरा. दोनों के पर्सेस में से कलेक्टिवली. तो उसको बोला 20 रुपए में कर दीजिए. तो बोला अच्छा ठीक है तो 10 रुपए रख ले, मेरे को 10 दे दे और फिर निकल ले. I mean, उस दिन पता चला कि एक तो we were like poor students who were on a Luna, but in his eyes, he still has sympathy while we were bribing him.
Yeah,
of course.
Like within corruption, there is humanity somewhere.
And bargaining.
Bargaining, yeah. Is that 10 रुपए का दे दो, 20 रुपए का दे. But yeah, so the chapter's introduction is very interesting, right? So the chapter is again titled Law and Social Justice. Do you recall the story of a shirt from class 7th book? We haven't read the 7th book, so we don't know, but they have described it. We saw there that a chain of market links the producer of cotton to the buyer of the shirt in the supermarket. Buying and selling was taking place at every step in the chain. Many of the people directly or indirectly involved in the production of the shirt, the small farmer producing cotton, the weavers of erode, or the workers in the garment exporting factory, faced exploitation or an unfair situation in the market. Markets everywhere tend to be exploitative of people, whether as workers, consumers, or producers. Do you agree with this statement? This is like a very blanket statement in the introduction.
See, I would contest this statement if I saw a lot of examples of company flourish from rags to riches.
Yeah.
And if I heard the story of the employee. But I only hear the story of the owner. Right. कि कोई कंपनी का यूएसपी या बोस्टिंग पॉइंट नहीं है कि मेरे हर एम्प्लॉय खुश है. मेरा कोई एम्प्लॉय डिप्रेस नहीं है, मेरा हर एम्प्लॉय खुश है, वो खुशी से काम पे आता है, खुशी से. वो स्टोरीज है ही नहीं. लाइक सोशल एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप इंडिया में एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करता. सब स्टोरी यही है कि मतलब ये आदमी के पास ये था, फिर उसके बाद उसने इतना सब बनाया, पर उसके नीचे जो लोग ने काम किया उसका क्या हुआ, वो आज क्या कर रहे हैं, उनकी लाइफ में क्या सुधार आया, वो नहीं है. बिकॉज वो लोग को ओमिट करके आपने एक शेयर होल्डर डाल दिया. वो वो शेयर होल्डर खुश है
Right.
और ओनर खुश है, एम्प्लॉयज के बारे में कोई बात नहीं करता.
Right.
So it is very difficult for me to disagree with this, that every company that is grown into
A giant
giant
conglomerate,
corporation, there is exploitation. मतलब maybe they are not directly exploiting the employee, but जो आज फ्लिपकार्ट या Amazon का तुम्हारा पार्सल लेके आता है दिन में, क्या गारंटी है कि वो रात को कोई बिल्डिंग में वॉचमैन नहीं है?
Right. Absolutely.
बिकॉज मतलब आप नहीं कर रहे हो एक्सप्लॉइट, पर हो तो रहा है वो एक्सप्लॉइट. मतलब
Right. And that do you remember this one viral story recently which had gone? Ki one I think food delivery Zomato app. He was found eating like certain things from the
food.
So it went viral, and basically it was like, Zomato, how dare the delivery person do this? But I actually felt really sad. That it has come to a situation where this guy has to stop and steal food from the people he is delivering it to, and that I think also defines the way we treat our workers, even in a company like Zomato.
But I think that's the thing, our priorities are so skewed, right? Like I was talking to people about this, and people were like, yeah man, this is so wrong. Like what if my food is touched by other people? I was like, oh, that's your main problem.
Right,
Like, you're not worried about the fact that he has to steal food to eat. You're worried, haath thoda lag gaya, ek bite chale gaya.
See, I think our mindset is such that we think if a person does something wrong, that was his first option.
Right.
Like we are not analyzing, okay, before stealing food, he has thought of not doing this. He has a conscience which he's battled, but then hunger has got the better of him, and he's decided कि मैं खा लूंगा. And I think to differentiate between, जब नीरव मोदी स्कैम करता है ना, वो लस्ट है, समझ रहे हो? जब ये करता है वो नेसेसिटी है.
Right.
So we have to identify कि कौन सा
Absolutely. And so basically corruption, which is say crony capitalist corruption versus corruption that is like everyday regular corruption. There's a giant difference. Right?
Yes.
And that is where I think the enforcement of laws also comes in, because this chapter is about companies using labor to make profits, how markets may companies flourish and whatever. But at the same time, how labor is exploited for that purpose. And how laws are supposed to take care of it.
I also feel the introduction just effaces the things faced by workers, because it puts workers, consumers and producers in the same line.
Yeah, that's true. Workers. And also, like, we are actually, this is a very, very interesting time to do this particular chapter because of the inequality report. Right? So Oxfam recently released this inequality report where they say that the top 10% of the country owns 73% of the wealth. Right? The top 1% owns 52% of the wealth. Right? Which means that literally 3/4 of the wealth of the whole country is with 10% people. And the rich 9 people, the richest 9 people own as much as 50% of the bottom, bottom layers. And that level of inequality is just so mind-blowing, right? And you have to stop and think, what is the system we are living in which has enabled this sort of inequality to exist, right? And why the fuck isn't anybody talking about it?
In response to that, have you guys seen the new law that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is proposing? What she's saying is she wants a marginal tax where anyone earning more than $10 million in the US, above the $10 million, it's taxed at 70%. And people are saying that's radical. That's too much. That's taking wealth from my...
Kunal, why do you think inequality is not a topic which people want to talk about?
Everybody is guilty of it, I think, firstly.
Right.
Like अगर आज मैं inequality के बारे में बात करूँ तो there have been like comedy industry, like I'm a comedian, like the opening act is getting maybe 1/20th sometimes of what I'm making, and I cannot challenge it because they're like, no, I mean we are not paying him for his skill set, we are paying him for just like doing a 5-minute act before you, and we are paying you because you pull the crowd. So there's a lot of
Dynamics.
There's a lot of deep down capitalism that kind of justifies all of this. Okay.
I recently found out about this +1 thing. Right? So I did not know about this, but I'll just talk about this a little bit because to the listeners who don't know this. So apparently in some clubs, you have to take one person along when you're performing.
At open mics.
And the person has to pay. For a ticket, which means essentially you are paying to perform as a group. Now, that is how sort of exploitative it is? Is that exploitative? What would you say?
See, it certainly is not correct.
It's not correct.
It's not correct. But what we are failing at doing is, we are failing at setting systems where we make sure that there is always an audience there.
Right.
So now it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
A joke needs an audience.
Yeah.
The organizer cannot put the audience, he can just put the stage.
Right.
So the performer is getting the audience with him.
Right.
And each performer gets one person. And it kind of rolls on like this.
Yeah.
But again, the thing coming back to like comedy industry is not different from any other
industry,
world where the top 15 make 99% of the wealth. And then there are another 1,000 comedians who are at open mics who make like 2% maybe.
Yeah.
So that is how it is.
Yeah.
अब क्या हो गया कि people do not come to watch the art form.
Right.
People come to watch certain people.
Yeah.
So those certain people get the best.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of it. Like I'm also under the same bracket of people who sells 200, 250 tickets every time. So I'll get in any show 60% of the ticket price. Then my management will take their 15%. So every ticket I sell, I make around 40-42% of it, say roughly. But it is this way where, like any other industry, we are not setting systems in place for everybody to be rewarded at least the basic minimum.
Right.
कि कुछ rule हो कि every time you go on stage for a show which has like 50 people in the audience, you get this. 100 people in the audience, you get that.
Right.
And that culture is not there because, one, if you instate that culture, there are a lot of comedians who want to break it.
Right.
Who will say, नहीं मेरे लिए stage time is money. मैं तो job कर रहा हूँ, मैं hobby comedian हूँ, मैं क्यों सोचूं इसके बारे में? And then there are a lot of people who will make the system and will be abused for it.
Yeah.
कि तूने ऐसा system कैसे डाला? The industry is going back. Promoters are not making money. Promoters are pulling out of shows. They are not doing shows. तो वो हो जाएगा. मतलब मैं तो अभी बोलो कि 33% lineup should 100% have women. Like if there are 3 comics in the lineup, 1 has to be a woman. ये डाल दो. रूल डालने में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, पर इसके ऊपर जो घमासान फ्लैक मचेगा और उसको झेलने वाला वही है जो रूल लाएगा. ठीक है, ये मैं प्रपोज कर चुका हूँ. इसका बैकलैश मैंने हर आर्ग्यूमेंट का सुना. 33% लाइनअप शुड हैव वुमेन. ओके, पहला आर्ग्यूमेंट आता है कि व्हाट इफ नोबडी इज अवेलेबल.
राइट.
Then what do? We cannot just have 2 comics on the lineup. We need the third one. What if the person available does not have the best skill set compared to a guy who's ये वाला argument आएगा. Third आएगा कि what if the person is not comfortable with the promoter.
Right.
फिर औरतों के साइड से ये आ रहा है कि अगर तुम ऐसे रूल डाल दोगे तो further segregation will lead to animosity amongst people in the business. तो इसके लिए कुछ भी formalize करने में बहुत ही स्ट्रेस है.
राइट.
जो आदमी फॉर्मलाइज करना चाहता है उसको.
It's very interesting, this whole dynamic that is working out in the comedy scene, right? Like, and it's a fairly new sort of dynamic, like industry itself, right? Very new, like, you know, it's just coming up also because of YouTube and all of this, right? People, like yesterday when I went for a stand-up show, right? The first thing that the host asked was, how many of you have been to a comedy show? Right? And then like 3-4 people raised the hand, we have never been. And then he was explaining the rules of being in a comedy show. You don't talk to the comedian unless they talk to you. Do not heckle. Do this.
Right.
It's that new, right? So my point is that this whole thing, when you apply it to say companies and corporations at large, it's the same dynamic. It is like minimum wage. Comedians ke liye chalo minimum wage. Think about it that way. Like how will it work out? Like as you say, like, you know, like a minimum amount of money has to be paid for a comedian going on stage. The promoters will be like, no, we will never do that. The guy who is pulling the crowd, we'd rather pay him or her rather than some random dude who is coming on stage.
That is where we are getting screwed. Okay, now what is happening is, because the guy on top is the only guy making money, everybody is not exploring the art form and they just want to be that guy on top.
Right.
तो आर्ट फॉर्म तो गया ना पीछे. मतलब आर्ट फॉर्म की तरफ कोई एस्पायर ही नहीं कर रहा है. दे आर एस्पायरिंग टुवर्ड्स लाइव्स ऑफ कॉमेडियंस. कि मुझे जाकिर खान बनना है, मुझे अभिषेक उपमन्यु बनना है, मुझे करुणेश तलवार बनना है, मुझे अदिति मित्तल बनना है. बट दे आर नॉट थिंकिंग, ओ मैं ये एक्सप्लोर करके ये कैरेक्टर कर सकता हूँ, मैं ये जोक लिख सकता हूँ. लाइक nobody is discussing the art form. Everybody is discussing possible livelihood opportunities.
Right.
कि पहले ये कर लूंगा, फिर Amazon का शो मिल जाएगा, फिर ये मिल जाएगा, फिर वो मिल. So that is where we are suffering, because if the systems were in place where चलो क्या कमाता है आज एक सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर, क्या कमाता है 80,000 कमाता है, 85,000 कमाता है 4 साल नौकरी के बाद. अगर वो मनी का समझो 60% भी तुम्हें कॉमेडी गारंटी कर रहा हो, तो तुम 5-6 साल मस्त आर्ट फॉर्म पे फोकस करोगे ना. फिर तो जल्दी नहीं है आगे बढ़ने की. पर अभी वो नहीं मिल रहा. जॉब के साथ करना है, जॉब छोड़ के ये फुल टाइम करना है, तो उतना पैसा चाहिए, तो उसके लिए तो टिकट बेचना पड़ेगा. टिकट बेचना पड़ेगा तो यूट्यूब पे जाना पड़ेगा.
Absolutely.
So it is just the same evil cycle that corporations
are. And this chapter is exactly about that, right? For instance, they have given multiple examples of companies, as they pointed out in the beginning itself, that everywhere markets are going to be exploitative. Just blanket me. Because corporations as lifeless entities are working for profits. Right? And they don't care about, say, human sort of the human labor that they're exploiting, etc. And the laws need to take care of that. Right? And if you're talking about the, say for instance, minimum wages, when it was first set, there was the same argument, right? कि अगर तुम minimum wage लगाओगे तो लोगों का job चला जाएगा. Because promoters will be like, नहीं, I want to hire these guys for cheaper because they are willing to work for cheaper.
Right.
And now that has been countered. Because that did not work out. Because minimum wage is guaranteed and it has to be given to workers, because obviously, right? But of course, it will only be enforced if there are, say, inspections happening, right? And in like textile factories in Rajasthan, etc., they are not happening, right? Or even if they happen, bribe de ke chhut jata hai.
Right.
It's cheaper,
right?
They actually factor in the cost. जो प्रॉफिट से निकाल के कॉस्ट है, ये ब्राइब देने में इतना जाएगा, बट देन द अमाउंट आई एम अर्निंग बाय पेइंग लेस टू द लेस एज वेजेस इज कंट्रीब्यूटिंग टू माय प्रॉफिट, सो इट्स टोटली वर्थ इट. एंड दैट इज द सॉर्ट ऑफ द सिस्टम वी हैव सॉर्ट ऑफ been living in for this long, and it's evident everywhere.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like coming back to what we were discussing earlier, that people are not seeing merit in being fair. People are not seeing merit in being judicious to their employees. Like अभी यहाँ पे भी तो देखेगा, जो business मारवाड़ी families है, उन लोग हर जगह spread out है. मतलब मैं नेपाल गया था काठमांडू शो करने, मतलब all the audience there was business Marwari families who are operating out of Biratnagar, Kathmandu and all, where they are producing stuff in Bihar because it's cheapest labor, and then they are distributing it here. And they are the richest people in Nepal. They've occupied the best spaces. 200% गाड़ी पे टैक्स है. They've occupied the best cars. Like वहाँ पे जैगवार खरीदना इंडिया से 3 टाइम ज्यादा है, पर तो भी वो जैगवार में घूम रहा है. और उसका कंप्लेन यही है कि लेबर नहीं तो सर. तो वो बेसिकली लोगों को अगर समझ आए, that's why I'm saying social entrepreneurship is the answer to this. Right. If there is a company that proves that paying a fair distribution between your artists who's for example weaving a carpet, like or making a carpet, like designing a carpet, hand woven carpets type kuch business hai, where every carpet 30% of the profit goes to the person who's actually making it.
Right.
If people see merit in a business like this, then it will happen. How will people see merit in the business like this? If we as consumers see merit in consuming those products.
Right.
That is also something that we are not accustomed to. मतलब environmental friendly चीजें मैं देखता हूँ import पे, वो normal चीज से 4 टाइम ज्यादा expensive है. तो मैं सोचता चलो फिर क्या करें अभी.
Might as well get stuff from Bangladesh.
Might as well get stuff which is cheaper off the internet without being environmentally conscious.
Absolutely.
I think the question that we are coming to, which this chapter also addresses, is the problem is, what is the worth of an Indian worker?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a very valid question, and I think it's very weird, but I don't want to like sound crude when I'm saying this, but demand and supply ka matter hai. Right? If there's a giant amount of supply of workers, their value will be less.
Right.
If they are skilled workers, but they are still coming in a giant amount, like engineers, their value will reduce.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you create way more engineers than required, in the job market they will be like भतेरो पड़े
Right.
एक किसी को भी हायर कर लूंगा एंड वैसे भी मुझे कॉलेज के बाद तो उसको ट्रेन करना ही पड़ेगा सो माइट एज वेल पुट दैट इन्वेस्टमेंट इन एंड देन यू नो हायर देम सो इट्स अ वेरी tricky sort of a situation there, right? So for instance, as Kunal also pointed out, the top 15 comedians are the top 15 for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like there are so many comedians, like for instance, like trying to make it to that top 15 position, but not everybody has cracked that top 15 sort of bracket. Right, and they might not be able to for a while. Maybe they will one day, maybe they will not. But the hope that you know we will become that valuable entity in that space is really difficult to achieve. Yeah, and so the value of the worker is somewhat similar, right? And I think that so we have to take a little break though, yeah, and we will come back and we will talk about why foreign companies come to India.
Hello and welcome back to How to Citizen. We are here with Kunal. This is the final episode, and now we are going to talk about foreign companies.
Shreyas, are you sad that this is the final episode?
I am.
I know, right?
I really am.
Yeah, I'm sad.
Because he's my cousin, but he doesn't hang out with me until we are recording.
I didn't know you all were related.
Yeah,
by the way.
we are cousins. We are both from Nagpur.
Oh.
Yeah, and we are fun people.
Now he's scared.
Nagpur is my favorite place on the planet. इधर क्या कौन सा fruit मिलता है? Mangoes are best. Mangoes and EVM machines.
Oranges, guys. Oranges is like mangoes and EVM.
So सबसे बेस्ट बनता है मैंगोस ऑफ सीजन में मैंगो मिलता है नागपुर में
प्राइम मिनिस्टर भी वहीं पे बनते हैं मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्लांट है हमारा प्राइम मिनिस्टर्स का so, अभी
talking about foreign companies, I just wanna like I remember learning in school that globalization and liberalization was so great for the economy. It opens up the economy. But like as I've grown older, I've read so many things where it says that it's only good for the corporate interest. It's only good for the people who are controlling the narrative, who are writing our textbooks, who are doing everything. But for people living in the country.
No, but to be fair to this chapter, actually, they've done a pretty good job of explaining that companies are exploitative. Like, for instance, the Bhopal Gas Tragedy example that is there.
Exactly.
That is exactly the opposite of what you would expect from a civics textbook, which is trying to tell you, oh no, liberalization and globalization is the way to go.
Liberalization and globalization is basically like a softer word for privatization.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you see the Bhopal case, this is not an Indian company.
Yeah.
ये कोई इंडिया का अगरबत्ती मैन्युफैक्चरर नहीं है जिसने ये गलती की है ये वो कंपनी ने गलती की है जो यूएस से आती है और ऐसी गलती वो वहां करती तो मतलब क्या हो जाता है पर उसकी हिम्मत है वहां नहीं करेगी यहाँ करेगी
एंड दे एक्चुअली पॉइंट दिस आउट व्हिच इज फैसिनेटिंग राइट व्हिच इज बेसिकली दे आर सेइंग कि इन्होंने यूएस में ये कभी नहीं करना है बट दे वर लाइक यहाँ पे आके तो हाँ बिल्कुल पोल्यूट करेंगे हाँ बिल्कुल सेफ्टी स्टैंडर्ड्स लो होंगे बिकॉज लेबर इज चीप
हाँ तुम एज अ गवर्नमेंट अपने लोगों की वैल्यू कर रहे नहीं हो तुम्हें एफडीआई लाना है तुम लाल कार्पेट बिछा के सब फॉरेनर्स को बोल रहे हो आओ करो एक्सप्लॉइट अब मेरे को बताओ मतलब हमें लोगों को सिखाना होता है एज अ गवर्नमेंट एज कि हमारा काम है लोगों को एडुकेट करना हम उसमें कितने खराब है पर कोई फॉरेन कंपनी आया बोला कि मुझे अपना बीपीओ यहाँ से चलाना है तो भाई सेम इंडियन बंदा मतलब 4 अलग अलग एक्सेंट में बात करना सीखा है
That's true.
ये कैसे हो रहा है
ये कैसे हो रहा है but that's I think need based learning versus learning just for the heck of it I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like for instance this podcast that we are doing is counts as learning just for the heck of it. There is no need for you to learn all of this technically but it's good if you do.
हाँ good if you do तुम्हारे थोड़े 2-3 opinions सुधर जाएंगे
हाँ exactly 2-3 opinions and the thing is you know one reason for foreign companies to come to India is for cheap labor. That is what you know they say what is a worker's worth that is what the book actually asks very clearly and you know it's interesting because like we are in 2019 we are right now recording in you know February 1st right and we are heading to the elections next which is coming up and this government's policy has always been to say first thing they wanted is FDI make in India like people should invest in India and but you have to make in India and the other thing that they have also pushed somewhat big but later silently is Skill India.
Skill in India.
So as a policy of the government, it's a brilliant plan, right? कि हाँ बिल्कुल सब आएंगे, यहाँ पे बहुत जॉब्स मिलेंगे, प्लस स्किलिंग भी होगा, तो उनका वैल्यू भी बढ़ेगा. On the paper it sounds amazing, but हुआ तो नहीं. Yeah.
हाँ, मतलब फॉरेन कंपनी यहाँ पे आएगी, ठीक है, और आके मतलब उन लोग हमारे मिनिमम वेज के हिसाब से हंसी खुशी काम करेंगे, और हम भी खुश है, वो भी खुश है. बट एज अ गवर्नमेंट विद सम अथॉरिटी एंड सम लव फॉर योर पीपल, इफ यू, मैं कोई बहुत बड़ा पॉलिसी मेकर नहीं हूँ, पर अगर तुम बोल दो कि जो तुम्हारे कंट्री में मिनिमम वेज है, तुम उसका 60% और आ कंट्री का मिनिमम वेज वॉट एवर इज हायर यू हैव टू पे, तो तुम्हें पता चलेगा कि क्या है रियल सिस्टम उनका यहाँ आने का.
That's true.
मतलब अपने रिसोर्सेज हम पूरे खोल के दे दे, और अपने ही मिनिमम वेज पे बाहर की कंपनी काम करे, अपने ही कंपनी से compete करके वो बेटर प्रोडक्ट प्रोड्यूस करेगी, क्योंकि उसके पास टेक्नोलॉजिकल एडवांसमेंट्स है, और अपना ही प्रोड्यूसर मार खाएगा अपने ही देश में. तो ये कहाँ से सही है?
Right. Absolutely.
So if you do a deep dive into why are we consuming foreign products in a country like India versus the Indian make of that product is still not up to the mark. It's because we are giving them an equal playing field when it comes to a lot of minimum wages and a lot of subsidies and a lot of everything that exists for companies here. We're giving them the same playing field with being culturally and technologically 30 years ahead of us.
Right.
Of course they will do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very interesting point. Like all these phone manufacturing companies, etc., coming here. Now they're hiring workers, they're opening up factories, but at the end of the day, that product which is being sold, उसका जो profit margin है वो बाहर ही जा रहा है.
बिल्कुल.
Yeah. And the exploitation is still happening.
Yeah.
कुछ इंडिया से चालू होके भी मतलब एक अच्छे लेवल पे आ जाता है, तो उसको चाइना आगे खरीद लेता है.
Yeah.
तो हमें ये सब चीज पे सोचने की जरूरत है कि हो क्या रहा है. मतलब why is it that एक पेटीएम जैसी कंपनी को इतना चाइनीज फंड का जरूरत क्यों पड़ा? क्या हमारे पास नहीं है पैसे? क्या हमारे पास लोग नहीं है जो इन्वेस्ट करना चाहेंगे?
This is a very interesting thing. So basically, I've been trying to answer this question myself. Ki what is going wrong? Because again, as I said, on paper, make in India makes sense.
Yeah.
On paper, skill in India makes sense, right? But ho kyun nahi raha hai? Kyunki it's very weird, and it's related to non-performing assets of banks. You know, because the बैंक का जॉब क्या है? लोन देना. लोन किसको देते हैं? People who want to set up industries, people who want to grow their business, people who want to set up their manufacturing plants, etc. Now, because the banks have stopped lending, because इतने सारे घटिया लोन थे पहले, and they've stopped lending, industry stopped growing. तो make in India कहाँ से हुआ? कुछ नहीं हुआ, right? Because FDI भी जब भी आ रहा है, they have been borrowing from banks outside, and that is the expectation, and they would put the money here. But that didn't happen. But then यहाँ के banks भी नहीं दे रहे, तो क्यों कोई सेटअप करेगा प्लांट? क्यों कोई कुछ करेगा? So we are in a weird situation where a lot of things are sort of coming together right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is more than a lot of things are coming together. It is the same conversation that we go back to. Who do we hold accountable and who do we hold responsible? And the answer for that is our constitution, because it has been drafted by minds which are extraordinary, and they of course foresee all of these things that you are going through today, and that's why this is very well worded and laid out for you. But the point is that what they did not foresee is the stakeholders of the country being extremely corrupt, extremely compromised, and lack of vision to an extent that a country which is so rich in so many fields, so many fields, like 70% of India is dependent on agriculture, and still agricultural policy is so
shitty,
so all over the place. Like if you just, like you were tracking the cotton, which comes from 8 different sources, and then comes onto your body, and then you pay a price for it. Like if you count any food item that you're consuming, and if you see the life of the consumer versus you see the life of the producer, you will exactly know something is going wrong. Like if you are saying कि जो company ये समझो ईयरफोन बनाती है, ये ईयरफोन क्या लग्जरी है? Like ये कंपनी का मालिक कैसे 1000 करोड़ का है? और जो तुम्हारा बेसिक नेसेसिटी है, जैसे राइस, दाल, जवार, वो प्रोड्यूसर जो बेसिक नेसेसिटी वाले प्रोड्यूसर्स है, वो कैसे इतना मार खाए हुए हैं?
Absolutely.
And then you will like backtrack and understand that it is just that every government has taken people who do not have power to accumulate information and made sure that they never acquire power to accumulate information.
Right.
And that's what it is.
Right. So according to you, the problem is also about information, like with the people, right? So what you mean is if people are more informed about these things and how exploitation is happening, what are their rights under Article 21, as they've mentioned here as well, we can sort of maybe fix this.
हाँ मतलब काफी
काफी
ambitious है और power is such a thing that it is just directly correlated to money.
Right.
ठीक है. अभी आज समझो मैं मेरी बिल्डिंग की बात करता हूँ. ठीक है. मेरे बिल्डिंग में समझो 6 माले का बिल्डिंग है जहाँ बाहर का पेंटिंग चल रहा है. तो कैसे होगा पेंटिंग? वो बाम्बू लगाएंगे, फिर एक आदमी चढ़ेगा बाम्बू पे, वो चढ़ता है बाम्बू पे, वो थोड़ा रस्सी बांध देगा वगैरह. पर बाम्बू, आदमी, रस्सी, बिल्डिंग का पेंटिंग, कितना फॉल्टी मैकेनिज्म है.
Right.
समझो वो कल गिर गया, समझो गिर के मर गया. तो आपको डॉज करने के लिए ये क्या चाहिए? ये सिचुएशन डॉज करने के लिए क्या चाहिए? उसके मेडिकल रिपोर्ट्स में थोड़ा दारू दिखा दो, नेग्लिजेंस एट वर्क दिखा दो, आगे बढ़ जाओ ये टॉपिक से. मतलब इतना इजी फिक्स है ये सब चीजों का. लाइक आप देखेंगे अगर कोई स्टैट निकाले ये चीज का कि कितने लोग कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्कर्स में मरे हैं और उसमें कितने केसेस में फाउल प्ले दिखाया गया कि वर्कर ही गलत था ये करने में. तो इतने वर्कर तो गलत नहीं हो सकते हैं. पर वो स्टैटिस्टिक का है नहीं.
No, actually, there, interestingly enough, and I should tell the listeners this, there was a show that was done on NDTV, Truth versus Hype, which had basically taken out this statistic about labor deaths. I don't have it at hand right now, but it's horrifying. And you're absolutely right, where, the contractor who is making these shitty bamboos and whatever is never held accountable.
Right.
Yeah.
The worker, on the other hand, also never gets compensated. The family never gets compensated because the law enforce करने के लिए कोई है नहीं. Right. And that is the value of the workers that we are talking about, right?
Yeah. और
मतेरो पड़े हैं painters.
बिल्कुल. और दूसरा ये है, मैंने दूसरी चीज ये भी सुनी है, I don't know how far it's right or wrong, but if you are in a union of workers union, you have to pay yearly fees to the union to kind of take care of your rights. Or when things are unionized to kind of take care of your rights, and if you have to pay to be taken care of your rights, then somebody can pay a little bit more so that your rights are not taken care of. So if you see everything that has happened, like the constitution beautifully words it, and India is such a glorious and forward-thinking country that we find loopholes in it, and then we operate by it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an evolving document, right? Like constitution में कुछ गलत दिख गया, फिर there is a loophole that you spot, etc. It is amended.
Yeah, it's most evolving right now.
It's most evolving right now.
So one in this chapter it talks about how there was this case called Subhash Kumar versus State of Bihar, and after that case they decided that Article 21 of the Constitution, which is the right to life, they included the right to enjoyment of pollution-free water and air for full enjoyment of life. That is something that gives me hope, where they are willing to expand the definition of an act to incorporate more things. So
privacy, right?
Yeah.
Abhi recent example, privacy. Privacy is now a part of right to liberty.
Right.
And that's the thing. We have a ton of rights, which the Constitution gives us, but refining it and applying it to our current situation is where the problem is.
Right.
Right. And privacy laws, even though हमारा fundamental right है, आधार को कुछ नहीं हुआ. Like enforcement कुछ नहीं होने वाला, because people are like, हाँ है right to privacy तो है.
हाँ, अभी तो मुझे बोलेगा कि तेरा पासपोर्ट रिन्यूअल के लिए गया है और अगर तू आधार डालेगा तो 2 दिन में आ जाएगा, नहीं डालेगा तो 15 में आ जाएगा, तो तू क्या करेगा यार? मतलब नॉट एवरीबडी हैज द सेंसिबिलिटी टू अंडरस्टैंड. नहीं यार 15 दिन रुक जाता हूँ.
Exactly.
जाना है थाईलैंड तो जाना है.
अब भी जाना है.
Since this chapter is called Law and Social Justice, I'm really interested in the relationship between both of them. I feel social justice is always ahead of the curve.
How do you mean?
People's sensibilities, like the activists, like they know what the right thing is. Like people are talking about the right things. People know what to do, but it's just like getting the law there. There's just such a big lag. There's just such a big gap.
You're right, actually, because RTI, when the RTI movement happened, that happened for years, right?
Yeah,
and consecutively.
2005, right?
2005 में, हाँ. And it's consecutively काफी था. उसमें अरविंद केजरीवाल भी था. उसमें योगेंद्र यादव भी था. उसमें like MKSS, a lot of people were there. And they guaranteed that there is a law that was made which will make our government more accountable. कि मैं RTI डालेगा तो मेरे को information मिलेगा.
Right.
If the government officer does not give me the information in 15 days, the government officer will be penalized.
Right.
Right. कि कुछ तो भी there's a provision. But the problem अब ये है कि तुमने law बना दिया. It was a great thing. Social activists made it, etc. Now it has been diluted. Like now this government has diluted it because bureaucrats ये नहीं देंगे, bureaucrats will not give asset details and all that.
नहीं तो खुद ही फेक RTI करा लो अपने काम पे, जैसे रफाल में मतलब कोई RTI कर लिया, कोई अलग ही RTI डाला है, वही अप्रूव हो गया, उस पे ही जवाब आ गया, मतलब बाकी सबके RTI रिजेक्ट हो गए, पता नहीं क्या हो रहा है, मतलब
exactly.
मतलब हम हर चीज में कैसे लूपहोल निकाल रहे हैं कि समझ नहीं आता.
और exploitation of laws, this was very funny, but there were like a few people who did a study from University of Chicago, I think, or Yale, I think, University of Yale. They found out that if you have put in an application to do something and you file an RTI about the same application, your application gets quicker, like basically it becomes quickly processed as a thing. So it's like, that's just messed up. Like bureaucracy को तुमको accountable करना था, but basic delivery के लिए भी याद दिलाना पड़ता है कि यार तू accountable है वैसे मेरे काम के लिए. And it's very interesting because either they have given a very intensive example of Bhopal Gas Tragedy. Throughout the chapter, right, where they said that first the safety laws were lax in India. Second, even these weak safety laws were not enforced. But they're saying that after the Bhopal Gas Tragedy, they realized कि नहीं कुछ तो करना पड़ेगा. And then basically they brought in like a lot of safety laws and fixed it. Right. Do we always wait for tragedies to happen for?
बिल्कुल. और जो जैसे मैं एक एग्जांपल देता हूँ, बॉम्बे के कोई रूफटॉप बार में आग लग गई, ठीक है, एक हफ्ते के अंदर भाई साहब हर एक रूफटॉप बार मेट्रो सिटीज में बंद हो गया. क्योंकि लाइक आई डोंट नो द एग्जैक्ट काउंट एंड आई डोंट वांट टू बी डिमीनिंग टू द पीपल हु लॉस्ट देयर लाइफ, बट आई थिंक इट वाज 14 or 15, आई एम नॉट श्योर, बट 14-15 अमीर लोग जो ट्रेजेडी में मरे. तो आप देखिए उसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन एक हफ्ते में. दिल्ली के मेरा शो कैंसिल हुआ, दिल्ली में कोई रूफटॉप बार पे था, कैंसिल हो गया क्योंकि रूफटॉप बार का कॉन्सेप्ट ही हट गया. रूफटॉप पे दारू नहीं हो सकता था, मतलब वो इमीडिएटली ऐसे चुटकी बजाते हैं. भोपाल गैस ट्रेजेडी, इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग, 8,000 लोग मरे. देयर वर 50,000 हु वर अफेक्टेड बाय द ट्रेजेडी, जो आज तक वो मतलब जीन बाय जीन पास ऑन हुआ है, ये सब टॉक्सिक जहर. और क्या हुआ, मतलब इतना बड़ा कुछ होना पड़ा कुछ लॉ रिवाइजन में. मतलब अगर 14-15 लोग होते और 50-100 लोग होते तो आपको लगता है ये होता? चांस ही नहीं है. Absolutely. And it's the same thing with, for instance, Nirbhaya. And this goes the other way also, right? Because Nirbhaya mein that very horrifying incident happens in Delhi. There were a bunch of protests, and their first knee-jerk reaction is death penalty. Like death penalty कर दो, and now it's like हाँ death penalty तो दे दिया, but death penalty rarely happens. Like 12 people have been hanged till now, like whatever, so it doesn't act as a deterrent either. Right. So I mean, the reaction to that should have been sort of like, we have to educate people about gender and like just their rights.
You just plug the problem. You just like, मतलब लीक हो रहा है तो तुम मेन पाइपलाइन के पास नहीं जाओगे, बस वहां सेलो टेप लगा के लेट्स मूव ऑन.
हाँ, मतलब आई थिंक एज अ कंट्री वी आर वेरी अल्फा. मतलब हमको लगता है कि ये हुआ है गलत. लाइक तुम बॉलीवुड का भी कल्चर देखेगा और सबका कल्चर भी देखेगा तो हम वही जोन में है कि तूने मेरी बहन को कैसे हाथ लगाया. कभी ऐसा नहीं होता कि तूने किसी की भी बहन को कैसे हाथ लगाया. That's true. लाइक तूने मेरी माँ पे कैसे. लाइक अरे भाई साहब पूरा कंट्री अल्फा है. कुछ होता है तो हाँ मार दो. यार ये काफी खराब है यार, ये जस्टिस और लॉ एंड ऑर्डर का हिसाब ये देश में. मैं आई विल टेल यू एन अंडरग्राउंड स्टोरी. ओके, मैं कॉलेज में था, चर्च गेट में मेरा कॉलेज था, जयंत. एक बार मैं कॉलेज से बोरीवली जा रहा था और एक मैं विरार लोकल में बैठ गया. विरार लोकल में बैठा और विरार लोकल में आपको बोरीवली पे उतरने नहीं देते बिकॉज वो लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस ट्रेन है. मतलब आपको बोरीवली तक जाना तो आप ये ट्रेन में क्यों बैठे, आपको बोरीवली वाली में बैठना था. हमारा जगह खा रहे हो, वैसे भी जगह नहीं है, वो राइट है उनका करना, तो आपको उतरने ही नहीं देते उन लोग. और तो वो दिन मेरे को उतरने नहीं दिया किसी ने तुम्हें, खड़ा था वहां पे, बोरेवली आके गया, ये आके गया। और थोड़े आगे स्टेशन मीरा रोड क्रॉस किया, भाईंदर क्रॉस किया, फिर उसके बाद एक पॉकेट मार था ट्रेन में। पॉकेट मार था तो पॉकेट मार ने पकड़ा गया, पॉकेट मार पर्स मारते हुए। अब 5 फ्रस्ट्रेटेड लोग जो अपनी लाइफ से बहुत ज्यादा फ्रस्ट्रेटेड है, उन्होंने कलेक्टिवली कॉल लिया कि आगे एक क्रीक आ रही है, ये पॉकेट मार को फेंक देना चाहिए।
ओह वाओ। और
मैं कॉलेज स्टूडेंट, मतलब ऐसा नहीं था कि मैं सोच रहा था कि ये नहीं होना चाहिए, मैं रोकूं या कुछ भी, मैं तो कोने में खड़ा था और इन्होंने ये कर दिया। ठीक है, तो आप समझो कि हमारा लॉ एंड ऑर्डर पे फेथ कितना कम है लोगों का, कि बोल रहे हैं कि हम ही डिसाइड कर लेते हैं यहाँ पे, और किसी ने रोका नहीं। कोई वो सेकंड क्लास के डब्बे में ऐसा आदमी नहीं था जिसने बोला नहीं नहीं इसको कुछ फेयर ट्रायल देना चाहिए। तो मतलब वो डब्बे में मैं आई डोंट नो इफ आई एम रॉन्ग, पर 120-130 लोग तो थे, उनमें से एक को भी नहीं लगा कि जो हो रहा है गलत हो रहा है, एक बटवे के लिए।
लाइक नेक्स्ट स्टेशन पे पुलिस को दे देंगे,
नहीं कुछ भी
सिंपल सॉल्यूशन, लाइक
कुछ भी नहीं, कुछ नहीं, सीधा फेंक दिया।
That's horrifying. That's
and that justifies the state of, so that is why when people are like ये मॉब लिंचिंग कल्चर वगैरह वगैरह, ये अभी का नहीं है, ये लोगों का बेंट अप एजिटेशन और रेज और ये सब काफी जमाने से है। मतलब आप आज भी बॉम्बे के कोई स्टेशन पे जाओ तो पूरे दिन में एक इंसिडेंस ऐसा होता है कि कोई लड़की को छेड़ता है और क्राउड उसको मिलके ऐसा पीटता है कि हॉस्पिटल पहुंच जाता है। होता ही होगा, होता ही है। ये बेंट अप एजिटेशन और गुस्सा जो लोगों का है, और लॉ एंड ऑर्डर पे कम भरोसा है कि भाई इसका कुछ नहीं होगा, हम ही डिसाइड करते हैं, हम दिखाते हैं, तो वो है हमारा कल्चर, मतलब वैसे ही हो चुका है अभी।
Absolutely. And this is interesting because we have a few minutes left, so I wanted to actually talk about this further because we mentioned inequality. Inequality is growing. Inequality is is more than ever since independence. But these kind of situations sort of explain how and why the lower working class is frustrated also. Like they might not be aware how much the inequality exactly is, but they feel it.
They feel the effects.
They feel that certain people are just amassing wealth in tons, and they're spending it on marriages. They're doing like a lot of things. It's all over the newspapers. Their lives, their glitzy lives, their standard of living is all there, while they are not getting the same thing. They're not even getting a pay raise. Their life is just the same as it was 5 years ago. So there is this inherent understanding कि कुछ तो गलत हो रहा है, frustration है, बढ़ रहा है, and when they see like an opportunity like this, there is a term, हाथ धो लेते हैं, बहती हुई गंगा में हाथ धो लेते हैं, and that's such a weird term, but स्कूल से सुनते आ रहा हूँ कि कोई मार खा रहा है, यार चल बहती हुई गंगा में हाथ धो लेते हैं. And that's such a disturbing mentality, no?
In Nagpur, I was at a chai counter. मतलब चाय पी रहे थे, टपरी पे थे, एक एक्सीडेंट हो गया, 25 लोग बैठे थे, सब उठ के चले गए, अरे मारो 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 बोल के. क्या हुआ कैसे वो देखा भी नहीं, सिर्फ आवाज आया, लोगों का झगड़ा, एवरीवन गॉट अप, चाय वहां छोड़ के.
मतलब मैं काफी डीपली अफेक्टेड हुए ऐसे मॉब कल्चर से. मैं जब भी रास्ते पे दिखता हूँ, आई एम लाइक, मेरे में हिम्मत नहीं है कि मैं जाके रोकूं, और किसी में मतलब कोई चैलेंज भी नहीं कर रहा है इसको, और सब लोग मतलब मिल के पीठ पिटाई में लगे हुए हैं. फेस्टिवल्स के टाइम पे भी काफी होता है. फेस्टिवल्स के टाइम पे तो बहुत ही ज्यादा होता है. मतलब रात को आप देखो कितने एक्सीडेंट्स होते हैं जो फेस्टिवल रिलेटेड है, कि लोग कुछ सेलिब्रेट करके आ रहे थे, ट्रैफिक लगा हुआ था, फास्ट जा रहे थे, एक एक्सीडेंट हो गया और पीठ पिटाई हो गई, और कोई मर गया, कुछ ये हो गया, कोई हॉस्पिटल पहुंच गया. हमें होली के टाइम पे तो बहुत इंसिडेंट्स होते हैं, टू बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट. मैंने बहुत देखा है, बिकॉज दोपहर में दारू पी के लोग गाड़ी चलाते हैं काफी. और वैसे इंसिडेंट्स तो काफी कॉमन है.
राइट. And so like one last very broad question I want to ask, right? What will it take to ensure social justice? Right? Just a very broad sort of solution for this. Do we have solutions?
I don't think if we have solutions. पर अगर ये conversation जैसे हम कर रहे हैं, ये हर आदमी सुन पाए, वो तो नहीं हो सकता ना.
नहीं हो सकता.
तो जैसे दिल्ली ने, आपने अभी डिसाइड किया कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्लासेस देंगे बच्चों को, तो बच्चों को कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्लासेस देने का मतलब ये है कि उनको अपने राइट्स के बारे में अवेयर करो, उनको सोशली कॉन्शियस बनाओ, उनको बताओ कि इंडिया एक सेक्युलर सोशलिस्ट देश है, और ये इन्फॉर्मेशन वो आगे लोगों को पास ऑन करे. हर बंदा तो एजुकेशन सिस्टम में एंटर नहीं करे. पर उनके नीचे जो काम करे, उनके आगे जो काम करे, उनके ऊपर जो काम करे, वहां तक वो इन्फॉर्मेशन ये पहुंचा सकते हैं क्योंकि ये पढ़े हैं.
Civic education.
Civic education basically. तो अगर ये अडेप्ट करे पूरी इंडिया, तो हम सिंग आज से 100 साल डाउन द लाइन तो हम सोच सकते हैं कि थोड़ा बहुत तो कुछ चेंज हो जाए.
Like basically changing consciousness of a citizen is not a joke.
It has to be inculcated from childhood.
Childhood.
अभी for lack of a better example तो लेफ्ट हाथ से गांड क्यों होता है?
Yeah.
You're just being reared,
हाँ
conditioned
एग्जैक्टली. तो राइट हाथ से प्रसाद क्यों लेता है? मतलब कंडीशन है. तो अगर वैसे ही तेरे लॉज और तेरी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन और तेरे देश के बारे में तुझे इन्फॉर्मेशन दिया जाए, सो देन इट विल बिकम अ पार्ट ऑफ योर कंडीशनिंग. लाइक अगर कोई तेरे घर पे पेंटिंग करने आएगा, बाहर का बिल्डिंग पेंट करने आएगा और तू देख रहा है कि सेफ्टी मेजर्स नहीं लिए गए, तो तू कॉन्ट्रैक्टर को बोलेगा कि सर आपका रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, इसको डालो. ये क्या चल रहा है? वैसा कोई बोलता है आज? नहीं बोलता, क्योंकि उसको ये लॉ ही नहीं पता.
लॉ नहीं पता, एम्पैथी नहीं है.
और वो बोल रहा है कि मेरा क्या लेना,
मेरा तो घर पेंट हो रहा है.
कंसर्न तो है ही नहीं, टॉप 100 कंसर्न्स में भी नहीं है कि इसका सेफ्टी क्या है, पेंट कलर कैसा है मेरा, इससे अच्छा और हो सकता है.
इससे अच्छा और होता है. And it's very interesting, and we are sort of going to end on sort of this note that this is a podcast on civic education. This has been like 10 episodes of civic education, right? And I just want to ask one question. Is it necessary for people to even know about these things? Why do you think it's necessary for people to know about these things? Why, does it increase empathy, or does it will it make you a better citizen?
I think just living here for so many years, for so many people, their worth has been dictated by the state, where they themselves don't believe that they are worth anything. So I think it's that's where education comes in, where you make people realize what their rights are, what is in their hands, what they can do, what they are entitled to ask for from the government. I think people should be more entitled from the government
about their rights.
About their rights. And I don't know if like education is definitely there, but I also feel like that frustration that we are talking about, that is there in people. Is there going to be a revolution? Is there going to be an outlet for that?
I don't know if we are organized enough to do anything. Like that is the problem. Like the unorganized sector, the difference of opinion and the baggages that people carry, there are very few things we unite for. And if you think what we unite for are mostly things which are probably not in the best of interest. Like everybody on the rape cases says death penalty. We unite unanimously. 98% of the country thinks rapist ko hang kar dena chahiye. But is it a good thing? Like we unite on things like these, कि Pakistan पे war कर देना चाहिए. Like, is it a good thing? So to get the public together for something that has nuance will require to give them information and education. Which is where we are. Which is where we are slacking, and I don't know if the slack is on purpose or if it's just that we are unable to do it.
And it's also very, very true with our school education system that रोज national anthem होता है, रोज तुमको patriotism के बारे में बताया जाता है कि तू अपने देश से प्यार करेगा, patriotic होगा. Soldiers are dying on the border. You have to you have to respect them. You have to do this. But you have to also address this point that it is more than that. Being a civic educated person, a good citizen on how to citizen is more than just loving your country. And even if you just love your country, it can also mean I want better healthcare. That is loving my country. I want better education. The government should bloody give it to me. And that is the answer to how to citizen. Hold your government accountable. Ask for things which you are rightfully owed. And be entitled about your rights.
Yeah, that's the plan.
That's the plan. And I think that is an excellent way to end this podcast.
Thank you for having me in the finale. Makes me feel special.
You are special.
ये मेरा version of Coffee with Karan वाला कि कोई बुला दे ending में superstar आ रहा है. So thanks for that.
That was the idea, guys. And that was the idea. And we got Kunal, Kamra for you. And this was a wonderful 10 episode. Shreyas, any thoughts on it?
When season 2. When we start recording season 2.
And we would love to hear your feedback about this season, this episode, and Kunal would love to hear your feedback as always, as he does on Twitter. He's looking forward to it. Things he has said.
Sale communist. This is what I'm looking forward to.
Urban Naxal.
I don't know if I should ask this question, but do you want to tell your Twitter handle?
@Kunal Kamra 88.
Yes. Is there anywhere else that people should follow you?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
Not in real life for sure.
Guys, so this has been a wonderful time. Shreyas, do you want to share your handles?
Yeah, I can be followed on Instagram @Shreyas_Manohar and on Twitter @VeryShreyas.
Yes, I am on Twitter @Meghnad and I am on Instagram @Meghnad S. Please to follow, please to galify, please to do whatever, give feedback, but give feedback. And also, as I've mentioned multiple times, this podcast can be an immersive experience for you. So all the chapters that we have done in this podcast are available in the description. You can just download it, you can read it with us. If you just heard the podcast before but now also want to rehear it with the book, please do that, because I'm sure, like all of us, we have understood through these 10 episodes, there is more to the Civics book than we anticipated. There are so many nuances that we have missed, which I think are worth recollecting.
Yeah.
So go to ivmpodcast.com/how-to-citizen, where you will find the episodes, the descriptions, and the drive link. So Kunal, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
It was good fun.
And that was great fun. That was a very nice conversation. Shreyas, thank you for co-hosting this podcast.
Of course, always here.
Always. Also, guys, please follow IVM Podcast. Please follow their Instagram and Twitter. And I hope they have restarted their Facebook page by now. This is the 10th episode, guys. Reminding you again. But please follow them. And please follow their other shows as well. They're doing a fabulous job of bringing people like me and Shreyas on board. So please continue supporting them. And I will see you maybe in the next season. Maybe. Let's get schooling. Let's get schooled. Bye-bye.